Welcome to a brand new season of Think Governance. In this series, we unpack King 5, a bold new standard for ethical leadership, accountability, and sustainable value creation in South Africa. Join us as we explore what this means for directors, business leaders, and governance professionals shaping the future.
So today I have the pleasure of talking to Mohamed Adam, who is currently Deputy Chair of the King Committee and has been a member of the King Committee for around a decade. So Mohamed, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure, Parmi.
So let's start with what King 5 recommends around reporting.
Before I get to reporting, I just want to start with the first principle, and that is effective reporting starts with effective governance. And I think there's a lot of concern and confusion because people get this wrong. There are a lot of standard setters, there are a lot of guidance around reporting, and people get into a fluster of how to report, what to use. And we should just go back to basics, and it starts with good governance. And what does the King say about good governance insofar as reporting is concerned? And why do we start with good governance? So firstly, transparency and disclosure accountability is one of the pillars of good governance. Secondly, you have the underpinning philosophies of King 5 and King for a long time around sustainable development. We said it best in King 4, quoting Tomorrow's World, where sustainability is, where success is redefined in terms of successful positive outcomes for society, the environment, as well as the organization. We have always spoken about stakeholder inclusivity, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And lastly, integrated thinking, which brings all of this together in a system kind of approach towards governance. And if that is important, then from that flows reporting. And if integrated thinking and performance in that way is important, then it's important to report in an integrated manner. So King advocates an integrated reporting in an integrated manner for this reason.
So since you mentioned integrated thinking, it's not a new concept, but I do think, the public out there maybe needs clarity on integrated thinking versus integrated reporting. Okay. What comes first? What, does one lead onto the other? What's your views?
So just like governance and reporting, one starts with integrated thinking. And that is around the relationships and interconnectivity and interdependence of the functional units in an organization and on the capitals it affects or uses and its outcomes. So that's integrated thinking. And if that is important, and if transparency is important, when one reports and is being transparent and being held to account, one should be reporting on all of these dimensions. So therefore, that is when integrated reporting becomes effective and important. It would be silly to say integrated thinking is important, but when you report, just report on financial performance. It just doesn't make sense. Stakeholders need to know how the organization, how the directors are adding value and value in the context of economic, social, and environmental value, and how the organization is performing in respect of those measures and financially.
Yeah. So another sort of buzzword of late in the space of sustainability reporting, etc., is double materiality. Now, it's not necessarily something completely new, but I do think the terminology may be new for people. So if you can just explain to us in the context of integrated thinking, integrated reporting, etc., what this double materiality means and why it's important.
Yeah, Parmi, this is quite an important issue, and I think it's been quite a debate for a while. So if we start with materiality and we start with financial materiality, so you have some of the standards and frameworks and guidance documents talking about an organization reporting on sustainability matters in terms of what impacts the organization. And when they talk about impacting the organization, it's looked at from the prospects of the organization, and that is financial impact. So it looks at financial performance, financial position, access to cash, access to funding, cost of capital, cash flows, that sort of thing. So if you look at the ISSB sustainability standards, for example, it's based on financial materiality, and it requires organizations to disclose their sustainability performance in terms of that lens. You then have counter to that, impact materiality. And this is about the organization's impact on stakeholders, society, the environment. Okay. So for example, GRI has given a lot of guidance around reporting on impacts on environment, pollution, those sorts of things. What integrated thinking is about and what integrated reporting says is that forget for the moment how you report, whether it's one report, whether you spread your report into different reports, because organizations use, for example, an annual financial report, a sustainability report, an employee report, various reports. The outcome should be reporting in an integrated manner. And that is double materiality. So it's reporting on the financial materiality as well as the impact materiality. And there's this misconception that if I take my financial report and I just tog it onto my sustainability report, I have an integrated report. And that is not what integrated reporting is about. That's not what integrated thinking is about. It's about thinking about all of the things that the organization does in a system and showing stakeholders the trade-offs that were made in arriving at the decision. So I mentioned stakeholder inclusivity earlier. So King 5 advocates stakeholder inclusivity, and that is taking into account the interests and legitimate expectations of stakeholders. This doesn't mean that you don't continue to act, if you're a company, in the interest of the company or in the interest of the organization. What it means is you consider all of these different competing stakeholders and make a decision in the best interest of the company. Now, what stakeholders should see and what transparency is about is to show how you've come to those trade-offs. It's not about satisfying every stakeholder. So a stakeholder can be very upset with the decision the organization has made. Maybe no dividends are being paid, so shareholders are upset. But explaining why that decision was made and why it's in the best interest of the company. That's what integrated thinking, integrated reporting is about.
So you may have touched on this already, but I think just to further information for our audience is you mentioned the GRI standards, you mentioned the ISSB standards. Now there's a lot going on internationally. Where does South Africa stand, and does King 5 align to what's going on internationally in terms of these reporting frameworks, or does it differ? What's your view on that? So
remember, King deals with governance, and these organizations deal with reporting standards, sustainability reporting standards. But there's complete alignment, because if you listen to what I said earlier about governance, it's about mindful application by the leadership in the organization about how they report, what they report on. They will decide how they're going to lead this organization. Are they going to, follow the principles set out in King? And if they do, then it means integrated thinking and stakeholder inclusivity, for example. If they do that, they will then decide what standards, what guidance best suits their way of leading the organization in reporting to stakeholders. And that's entirely up to them. It's a choice they must make, so King will not prescribe. What we do say is that in order to fulfill the founding principles of foundational concepts and the principles that support King is integrated thinking, sustainable development. So an organization should report in a way that is integrated. It should be an integrated report. So whether it's one report covered across 5 different documents, as long as there's reporting in an integrated manner, and it's not just taking silo reports, putting them together and thinking that that gives you an integrated report. So that's the only principal prescription through King. But how you do it, which standards you use, are choices that the governing bodies need to make.
And this non-prescription is something that flows throughout the King report. Getting governing bodies to apply their minds to what makes sense.
Absolutely. It's one of the principles that flows through King. Yeah. It's about empowering organizations, empowering leadership to apply themselves, apply their own minds, and not make governance a tick box exercise. And similarly with reporting, if you make it a tick box exercise, it's useless. You want to equip the governing bodies with the tools. You want them to apply their minds. You want to give them guidance as to how they should apply their minds. But the choice is ultimately theirs. If an organization believes they don't agree with some of the principles or philosophies, they don't want to fulfill integrated thinking, it's a choice that they can make. But our recommendation is integrated thinking, if that's how you lead the organization, then decide what is the best way and which audience to report to in showing integrated performance and integrated reporting, and then reporting in an integrated manner.
And just when you mentioned it's a choice they make, I guess they make the choice and then explain it in a way that's acceptable to their stakeholders, right?
Of course. And organizations can make bad choices, and stakeholders will then have to respond to that.
Yeah.
So the principle about reporting and transparency as accountability starts with the issue of explaining the decisions we've made and why we've made them. And that cuts across integrated reporting as well. I could invest in environmental projects at the cost of something else, or vice versa. I need to be honest about that, and I need to be transparent about that. And my shareholders, stakeholders will decide whether they support my choices or not.
Yeah. And then let's move a little bit towards governance reporting. The disclosure framework that has come into place now is a bit of a game changer compared to the past King codes.
Yeah.
What is your views on the need for that?
Look, I think it's going to be of great assistance. Parmi, I think it'll help with the discussion we're just having right now. So, I mean, what we've said in King, it's simple on reporting. We said, produce an integrated report at least once a year.
Yeah.
Okay, so reporting in an integrated manner. We said external reports should be formally approved by the governing body and should be available on your website. It should be accessible to stakeholders. And the last thing we've said is use the disclosure framework to report, and to report on the principles firstly, which are universally applicable. And then we've said, tell stakeholders where you've not applied certain principles or practices, and there may be good reason for it. And that is good disclosure because it's transparent. Stakeholders will understand why an organization has not applied certain particular principles, and that can be explained. And in that way, I think there'll be at least some sort of comparability and a way of determining whether an organization is being truly transparent. We've also included this time a statement about adherence to the King codes, which I think will also be useful to stakeholders around, firstly, that they've adhered to it, and secondly, whether it's added value to the organization. So when you take all of that together, and also then the empowerment of leaders of organizations to make choices around reporting, I think stakeholders will then get the full benefit of what transparency is about and accountability. There's transparency about reporting, there's transparency about what you haven't done in terms of governance, and I can now decide whether I like the choices you've made or not.
Yeah. And then finally, as a member of the advisory group that has spent hours discussing and debating and getting to the final King code that we have now, what are some of your hopes with regards to how this is going to be accepted in the market and implemented?
Yeah. Look, I think we've worked very hard to try and make it simple, understandable, and accessible. And for me, one of the major issues around the previous King reports, whether I agreed with it or not, was the usual easy opt-out about it's too complicated, it's too difficult, it takes too much admin, it needs red tape, we're a small organization, we can't do it. I mean, we introduced the issue of proportionality a long time, but we still had these complaints. So, Parmi, for me, if I have one wish, it would be that we've at least managed to deal with that in an effective way, that we've simplified the principles, that we've made it accessible, that implementation is easy, that the tendency towards a tick box is therefore not there, and then hopefully it leads to better outcomes in terms of better governance practices across the board.
Absolutely agreed, Mohamed. Thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Thank you. Most welcome.
And thank you for listening. And please follow our channel and watch the other videos in this series on King 5. Thank you.